Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. And in today's video we're going to be talking about yet another fan favourite coming along and returning to Dissidia with their LD and their new burst and a small, a pretty big rework actually, and a lot of other fun stuff as well, and also the return of my favourite character in the franchise. You can see him in that bottom left hand corner there, Kuja. But does Kuja's kit still stand up now that he has the ability to be called and has an LD board? And will Y'shtola, with the fan favourite I spoke of previously, be a big deal and a big splash in the world of Dissidia Opera Omnia? If you want to find out more, as well as about the dreaded Steam counts that come back for the Lufenia mission with these heretic missions, then as always, stay tuned and keep on watching. As always guys, don't forget to check out in the description box below all of the social media links that I have, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon. On Twitch this week, on Tuesday, I'm actually going to be filming a 12-hour marathon for Final Fantasy XIV with the new 5.5 patch. Lots of very exciting stuff, and is actually in relation to the release that's coming out in Dissidia Opera Omnia as well, with it being Y'shtola and all. So I'd love it if you guys came and checked that out. With regards to Patreon, I always shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video. Today that person is going to be Drifter, who, as you can see on their title card, doesn't have a Final Fantasy character on their title card, and you don't have to either if you don't want to, if you want to have something made for you just like this one, as well as features such as the being part of Would You Pull, being part of voice chats that we all do together, and I actually do have some brand new exclusive content coming for my Patreon that's exclusive to you guys with relation to the channel itself. So, and that's all going to be coming at no additional charge to you guys that are already on Patreon, so a massive thank you goes out to all of you, and that'll be something for you guys to look forward to in the future as well. Don't forget to check out all of the different resources that I have available for you in the description box below for Dissidia Opera Omnia, and of course don't forget to check out all the other fabulous content creators that are out there as well as me. Now, before we go into the star of the show, it's not really the star of the show, but it is to me, let's have a look at the banners themselves and what's going to be coming along with them. Now, on one of the banners, we're going to be, on both banners, we're going to see Y'shtola's burst. So that's going to be the featured burst on both of these banners. And then on one of them, it's going to feature Kuja's returning LD and not his burst, but it does have his EX, his 15, his 35. And it'll also carry Lillicet and Sabin EX along for the ride as well. And then the banner that has Y'shtola's LD on it and her EX, etc., as well as her burst, will also feature Balthier EX and Fujin EX. So if you haven't had a chance to pick up Balthier just yet, or Balthier's EX at least, if you have his LD already but not his EX in that rare scenario, then maybe you could pick it up here as well. Now, let's talk about Kuja first. Now, Kuja, as you well know, is a character that I adore, but with his new LD boards and the fact that he has a C80, so that he has a call ability now, he doesn't actually get an awful lot from it, except for the fact that he can now call other characters, which is a big factor. It brings him up to speed on where everybody else is. But if you've not used Kuja before, he is a holy magic damage dealer. That's what he's for. He does AoE damage. He has party auras for attack and speed and has Enchant Imperil for holy. But there's another character that has a lot of all of this stuff nowadays, and a bit more nowadays in Paladin Cecil. But Seraphic Star, his LD attack, still hits like an absolute bus, and it's now going to hit even harder thanks to his LD board. But in terms of call abilities, his LD is nice. Like, if you want to take Seraphic Star for its raw damage, you also get the Melody of Life framed debuff from Ring Holy as well, so you can set up the damage a bit for Seraphic Star. Now, this imperils Holy and reduces speed a little bit, but there are other calls you're probably going to use over Kuja unless you're going to take advantage of that extra imperil, say on Cecil, for example. And then his LD boards, yeah, he doesn't really get a lot out of that. Like, when using Seraphic Star, it hits harder, and now it increases Party Brave Overflow by 20% with the party buff that you get from Terrace Crystal, which is his special effect that is Enchant Holy for the party, amongst other stat increases. Now, I think that it's nice. I think that it's all pleasant, but in the grand scheme of things, I think if you've lived this long without Kuja, you don't really need him now. Certainly not if you have Cecil. Cecil gets resisted, well, Holy gets resisted a lot in coming times, or between now and, say, Divine Alexander. Like, it gets resisted quite a few times, so I think that because it's designed to hit Cecil, Kuja's kind of been caught up in the crossfire along with him. So, like I said, if you've not gone this long without Kuja, then you probably don't need him now. But if you still love him and you love him like I do, then you can still get some use out of him if you want to. So now let's take a look at the actual star of the show, which is Y'shtola. Now, Y'shtola's kit in Dissidia, as of this point, actually really excites me because as a white mage main in Final Fantasy XIV, there's a lot of reflection as to how white mages work in that game that's reflected within this kit as of the LD and the rework, etc. That's actually very exciting. So first things first, let's take a look at the rework that she has. So originally Stone was an attack that was a brave HP attack that had delay on it by 1 turn, which is fabulous as it is, but it's a bit outdated. But what they've done with it this time is they've given it a brave battery function as well, as long as she's buffed. It's also a 4-hit brave HP attack as well. But she should always be buffed. She buffs herself with a lot of stuff. Even Stone itself gives her brave regen. You should be fine to always have that up. Now, Medica was an interesting ability as well, because basically what it would do is it would multiply her current bravery and then increase her allies' bravery by the amount that her current bravery was at the time. Well, now it's increased in general, like the fact that she gets more stats out of it. You get 2 more uses out of it for a total of 7 uses in total, as well as 8 uses of Stone, and now it heals the party, which is a very strange thing to get added later than on an ability called Medica. It's not just a brave battery anymore. It does heal up to 20% of each character's HP, and it doesn't increase the turn count either, which is fantastic. It definitely brings her up to scale. Now, Pulse of Life was a really, really strong EX that, when it first came out, was too slow really to use very regularly, but it still had the ability to fully heal everyone, fully battery everyone to 100% of their bravery, and then also like resurrect KO'd allies, which is actually a very relevant thing for the event that she's a part of as well. And it also restored skill uses. Now, any EX that restores skill uses adds an incredible amount of longevity to the character, because you basically just don't run out of skills. And then when she got her EX+, this added a huge amount to her because you got brave regen out of it. You got the fact that you could start the match with it. You could also get like more recast rate of it, so you were actually able to use this extremely frequently. It also gave her Last Stand, another thing that's going to come into relevancy when we talk about the event itself. It had no turn delay. It doesn't give you a turn count increase. And then her HP++ that she gets out of it is an ability that's just an HP plus that gives her more bravery, hits with HP, and batteries equal to half the damage that you dealt with it. So it's all good stuff. But her LD and her burst, or well, her LD at the very least, transform her in a nice way. Now, her LD is Holy of the Seventh Dawn. First things first, this has a rebreak on it, which is a nice thing for her to have because, well, it means that you can manipulate your enemy's turns even to a small extent between this and Pulse of Life and Stone, like being able to use abilities that don't take turns up, things like that, so that you can make sure that your enemies get their bravery out unbreak, or you could just delay them with Stone, or you can use this to delay them an extra turn. You get a hit brave HP attack that's 100% AOE damage. And it's 8 hit after the LD was, just having a look now. But it's not multiple HP dumps, I will say that. She gets Blood Lily, which is a thing that stays with her permanently. It's a special effect, and basically this will increase by a level up to 3 every time you use a skill or action, anything that has bravery recovery or HP recovery. Now, this doesn't work with regen effects or sphere effects, so just bear that in mind. It does work with calls, but because it's a once per turn effect, you can't use a call and then one of her skills and get 2 lots out of it. She then gets a transformed version of her bravery attack, so her regular bravery attack becomes Arrow of the Seventh Dawn. So Arrow is a 4-hit brave HP attack AoE with split damage that recovers some of her bravery. So she gets a nice kind of attacking move, which she didn't really have any way of shaving bravery very well at all, apart from Stone, so she has a way of doing that now. And then when you get the Blood Lily up to level 3, you then get the Arrow transform into Afflatus Misery, which, if you've played FF14, you know what the score is with Afflatus Misery. It is a brave battery to herself and then a triple HP dump, double bravery between each hit, gives her some of her bravery back for each HP hit. So she gets some actual attacks here, which is really nice. So this consumes the Blood Lily, so you go back down to 0 and you have to build back up again, but you can use this periodically in order to be able to make use of it. She only gets 3 uses of the LD, but the main thing you get from the LD is the Blood Lily that enables her to have a lot of just damage potential where she didn't before. It's not anything spectacular, like I'm not talking lightning level damage or like Emperor HP pluses or anything like that, but it's a definite nice way to round out her kit. And then her burst as well. Her burst Spiritual Ray is, again, fangasms to any FF14 players who've seen Spiritual Ray. But this is a split damage, AoE Brave HP, with a burst effect that raises attack by 50%, gives her Brave Overflow by 30%, Brave Overflow by 30%, increases Bravery damage limit by 20%, and HP damage by 20% as well. As long as their Bravery is bigger than their initial Bravery. Which is fine, like it's nice, like it's nothing spectacular. However, the thing with this is Y'shtola is one of the first adopters of Burst Plus. When it comes out, Burst Plus is released with Zidane and Y'shtola. And Y'shtola actually elevates herself a great deal by having the ability to have a Burst Plus, which gives her the ability to use Spiritual Ray outside of the Burst phase. It adds an extra turn to her Burst phase, and it also adds additional effects to the Burst. I'm not going to go too heavily into what Burst Plus is right now, because I'm going to do that obviously nearer the time when it arrives in Global. But a lot of players know what it's all about if they've ever looked at the JP version of the game. And the fact that she is an early adopter of this increases her longevity, shelf life, massively. But because without it, I probably wouldn't recommend pulling for Y'shtola if you had somebody like Aerith already, because there's a lot of comparisons to take between the two. They're both support characters with healing and battery in their kit. Y'shtola can manipulate enemy turns a lot more easily than, say, Aerith can, but Aerith has that fantastic Seal Evil buff and debuff that comes with her kit that prevents buffing and debuffing altogether. So if you already had Aerith, Y'shtola's not quite as big a deal for you. She doesn't have some of the same things that Aerith does, and Aerith doesn't have a few of the things that Y'shtola does. So having the two be quite similar with Resurrection and Bravery, Battery and HP healing, etc., you may not feel that you need both of them. However, even though I have Aerith, I'm tempted to go pretty heavily in on Y'shtola because of the fact that you're going to get 2 lots of use out of her. She's a synergy character with a burst, which means that she's at least usable for her entire kind of line of events, so hers, Trey's, etc. And then she's going to get another life later on when she comes out with Burst Plus, and it means that you can direct your resources at Zidane if you wanted to, and not necessarily have to pull for Y'shtola because you've already got her Burst and her LD ready for it. So that's something you might want to bear in mind if you want to pull for Y'shtola. As far as core abilities goes, I quite like Y'shtola's actually. Because she has stone with the delay and the defense down, etc. It also does like party battery as well, so for a little bit for the damage dealt, just like her reworked version of stone does. And then Holy of the Seventh Dawn has the rebreak on it. So if you're using this with a character like Cloud, for example, you can manipulate the enemy turns a little bit, enough that you can get a really powerful launch off. And the fact that you get Party Bravery off of both of these skills means that it works really well with launch characters. So I quite like Y'shtola's. I don't think it's one that I'm going to use all the time, but it's definitely one that's nice to have in my back pocket. Then with regards to her artifacts, the recommendation here over on Dissidia DB is Initial Bravery and Max Bravery, which is prudent because a lot of her stuff scales off of Initial Bravery. But I think because now she actually can deal damage, having attack wouldn't be the worst idea, because attack on the fact that you can use Aero, you can use your Stone, you can use the Afflatus Misery, the actual LD attack itself. They all actually deal damage, so having attack on her isn't actually a bad shout. But because she's an early character, she doesn't have any bells and whistles or anything on her skills. Then with her LD board, as I said, all it does is add a couple of extra hits and sort of brave potency to the LD attack, so nothing special there. And then in terms of high armor, she has a support keystone. I like the support keystone, but it's never my first port of call. But like Party Bravery held and HP damage dealt extra 5% It might be quite nice in conjunction with other characters like Kuja, obviously being a synergy character for this event as well, having the the keystone for the Unity keystone. Couldn't find the word there. The Unity keystone means that you can get a nice compound between the various characters. But I don't think you have to have this if you don't want it. But when it comes to Y'shtola in general, I think this is definitely one that you want to look at as a future investment, particularly if you have characters like her, because while she's very good, she doesn't last a huge amount of time in the near future. But she lasts for a little while, for a fairly good while now, falls off a little bit, but then comes back with a vengeance later on. So now let's take a look at the Lufenia mission that's going to be coming along with Y'shtola, and long-time veterans of the game will not be looking forward to this one, because it's the return of the Count Steams, or Steam Counts, whichever way around that goes. And these guys are unpleasant, to say the least. Now, the first thing that I will say with this mission is that the game expects that you will get at least one KO within this mission, and it's okay if you do. You can take up to 2 KOs and resurrect your character because of Y'shtola being a synergy character and still expect to hit the score requirement just about okay. Any more than that and it might be a problem, because what this also expects from you is last stand, because what the Count Steams like to do is after they hit the 80% and 50% thresholds, they'll frame their turns, cleanse all their debuffs, everything. They can't be debuffed, they can't be delayed. You are going to have to deal with this attack, which is the multi-slash plus, which we've seen before, all the way back in Deuce's Lost chapter when she got her EX. And this thing is just a brave HP attack. And in the Lufenia variant of it, all HP damage reduction, HP like Gladio's effect, everything like that does not work. You are going to take damage from this attack, and it's going to be a lot of it. So what the game is expecting from you is that you can either survive it with a last stand, or you can resurrect it. And they will always target the character with the highest amount of HP. So theoretically, if you were to get Y'shtola, you would want her to have the most HP, followed by someone else that can quickly be resurrected by her. So Y'shtola gets hit by one of the multi-slashes from one of the Count Steams, because there's obviously 2 of them, she gets put to 1. Then because she's not at the highest HP anymore, the Count Steam targets the next highest HP HP character, attacks them, kills them, and then you're expected to resurrect them with Y'shtola. So that's how that's supposed to work. You can actually circumvent this by having an extra last stand character. For example, Celeste. Celeste is absolutely fantastic for this mission because a lot of the enemy's attacks are magical. All of their attacks with their left steam, right steam, things like that, they're all magical based. So if Celeste can lock them out before they render themselves immune to debuffs, then you kind of just make your life a lot easier in general. And she also has last stand, so even at the point where they are immune to debuff and they can't be locked by her, if she's got more a good amount of HP but not more than Y'shtola, she can then take the next hit and not die from it, and then instantly be healed back by Y'shtola. And that brings me to the Lufenia Orb as well. The Lufenia Orb, provided you're bringing along the right characters, should be absolutely fine. And again, if Y'shtola is expected to be a part of this, but if you don't have Y'shtola, Aerith is a fantastic stand-in for her because she has heals that will cater for this. She also has the ability to resurrect characters as well, and she's just got batteries and stuff that can help you out as well. Because the Lufenia Orb requires you to heal 50% plus health from one skill. And you get plus 5 turns for every ally that's been healed. The other character that you can expect to be seeing a lot when it comes to this mission is Paladin Cecil, because his LD attack also fulfills this condition, and obviously is just a really good thing to have access to anyway. So the most common sort of combinations of characters you're going to see here are things like Cecil and Y'shtola, Cecil and Aerith, Celeste and Y'shtola, Celeste and Cecil, Kuja as a damage dealer can be thrown in there. There's a lot of different combinations of things for that, but those are the most common. The other thing you can do is evade those particular moves. You can use 8 as a character to just evade everything. I've seen quite a few clears of it. You can use him to evade all of the big multi-slash pluses, and so they lose the ability to retain their framed turns and inability to be debuffed, etc. And then 8 can counter things as well. He's got the lock for when it's able to be applied. Just make sure that you're able to take someone like Cecil with him, so you're getting the most damage out of you as you can from 8. And then you can. I have actually seen clears of this that are brute force trying to push through using Cecil's LD as the only method of recovering bravery, but it's a very, very, very strict combination of characters. You need to have a lot of different things for it, but it can be done that way if you so choose. But generally speaking, you want a bursty healer, Y'shtola, Aerith, Cecil, and some way of surviving the rest of their onslaught and preparing for those multi-slash pluses. Whether it be resurrecting the character as soon as they die, making it so that they don't die at all through Last Stand, or just evading the attack completely. So now let's ask ourselves the big question, of course, should you be pulling for Y'shtola and Kuja? Now, in the case of Kuja, I would personally advise against it, which pains me to say because I love him as much as I do. He's certainly not a bad character. He's just not gotten an awful lot from this particular banner. The fact that he's level 80 and has a little bit of extra effects on his LD boards is great. And the fact that you get his Seraphic Star as an LD call is kind of nice. But realistically, there's very few times in which you're going to use him over Paladin Cecil. You might use him alongside him, but because there are missions going forward that resist Holy, and by the time those are over, there's probably going to be a lot of other characters you're going to go for first. And it doesn't help that Kuja's burst doesn't actually reprise itself here either. But Kuja is still very much a quality of life character. If you're still summon board farming or anything like that, Kuja is absolutely fabulous. But in terms of actual Lufenia missions going forward, there's rarely, if ever, a time where you would need him or even want him, because there are other characters that just do his job better at this point. It saddens me to say it, because but Cecil existing has kind of hurt Kuja. But with regards to Y'shtola, this one's a bit of an odd one, because there are reasons to pull for her and reasons against it. If you don't have Aerith, for example, and you want a healer support-based character because you're going to need one for this particular Lufenia mission at the very least, then she does do it very well. She does it differently from Aerith, but they do fulfill a lot of the same roles. And it's rare, though this mission is an example of one where you can take both Aerith and Y'shtola because they're not damage dealers at the end of the day. Neither of them are. But where Aerith has the buff and debuff management, Y'shtola has turn manipulation and, that Afflatus Misery, which can do bursts of damage. And she has a burst, where Aerith doesn't. So if you get a burst, that is a thing. Support-based bursts are often written off because they're not large damage windows, and Y'shtola's is definitely on the lower end of the damage spectrum. But it's nice that she has one at all. It opens up different party compositions. So if you have something that you would like, then definitely consider pulling for Y'shtola. And if you want to invest with a character that has a bright future, seeing as she is one of the earliest adopters of the Burst Plus era, if you get her burst now, or even if you could consider using burst tokens on it if you're not bothered about pulling on her on the rest of her banners and just grabbing her LD, because you don't have to get her burst now. If you're looking at using burst tokens, you can save them for nearer the time when she's going to have her burst plus, and then you can still just grab it and then you've got access to it. But you are going to be able to set yourself up for having an advantage within that period of time early if you have Y'shtola's kit now. But if your resources are hurting a little bit and you're not willing to invest in something that's X months away for the future because it would impact your ability to pull in the near future, I wouldn't suggest using your resources for that where you could be using it for other things that would enable your enjoyment of the game more at the present. Worry about that kind of thing later if you need to. I would suggest trying to pick up her LD at the very least though, because having she is a synergy character with a burst. If you have her kit ready for later, fantastic. If you don't, it's nothing to stress about, but it would have you at an advantage later down the line if you were to get it. And then finally, it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to make your voice heard and let everyone know whether you would or wouldn't pull on a banner any given time and why. So with these banners where there's two of them, I tend to ask people whether they would spend resources, just all told, in order to save time on the video, basically. So whether they're spending resources on Y'shtola or Kuja, whether they'd be spending resources at all. Now, to go into some of the numbers here, thank you once again, of course, to all of my patrons who voted and commented. There's actually quite a lot of people wanting to pull on these, which I'm not as surprised by, but kind of at the same time. It's a bit of a weird one. 34% of people said they were going to use gems on this banner. 58% of people said they were going to use over 100 tickets. Only 5% of people said that they were going to use less than 100 tickets, and only 3% of people said no. Now, I know that there's a lot of bias towards Y'shtola. I know that she's a very, very popular character, and quite honestly, due to the fact that she does have a bright future, I'm tempted to gem this banner, even though I've had some pretty horrible luck recently. I'll tell you the truth. I did go back into Eldnash to try and get Emperor, spent 20k in rage pulling, and I pulled myself away. Judge me for it later. But I'll tell the truth. But with Y'shtola, I definitely think that it might be worth gemming this, just because it's a time where you're going to be able to make the use of it twice. But let's go into some of the comments. So Kazira here says, Toli is actually the only person in the entire game, with the possible exception of either Tidus or Jecht, who I'm intent on getting a burst for, even at the expense of 125k gems. While I would like to be able to grab burst with luck or tokens, I'm considering dropping the burst pity once all of her banners are out. Now, her banners are a bit of an odd one. She's got this one. She may have Sarah, who is a character that is very, very not popular within Opera Omnia due to the lack of power that her LD brings. Trey, who's an interesting character that I'd honestly quite like and I would consider going in on. And then there's Waka, who is actually very good but comes back on a significantly stronger banner. So if you're going to pull for Y'shtola, I do actually think this is the one to go in on. Jeffrey Red Cloud Barros Jr. says 100 plus tickets if needed, just need her LD, otherwise my Y'shtola is maxed. Although I'm considering just pitying her burst right away because I'm not planning on going on gems on one of the other banners she's on. There's nothing else I really need or want, so I might go in for her right away. First things first, let's also not forget that there are free pulls on these banners. There's free pulls on all of hers. We were given that information for the Spring Festival, so do be careful going all in straight away, certainly with burst tokens and the like. I had to really judge whether I was going to use burst tokens on Emperor or not due to timing issues, and I kind of wish I did. So it can sting you, so getting it early, it's not all bad, but don't necessarily go pitying it or burst tokening it on day one. Selk says, definitely just look at my display picture, a trend that you might see across some of the comments that I've displayed today. As a huge fan of FF14, I'm with you on that one, I will certainly pull for best cat waifu Y'shtola, even after having to pity Emperors and Aerith's LDs back to back. Ouch, my pain is not quite there, but I feel you. I will get her max no matter what. She's one of the best supports back in the Chaos era. Her support capability is still fine in today's era. Her LD is very interesting as it turns her into a damage dealing unit, which is bonkers. The way her kit is structured in OO is super fun to play. I'm really excited. I think a lot of people share your sentiment there, and I'm one of them. But the weird thing is I'm not attached to Y'shtola just as much as I'm attached to White Mage. So the fact that Afflatus Misery is a thing in this game, I find very exciting as well, even though my attachment isn't necessarily to the character, but the playstyle. So I find that very interesting. And then finally, Biridan says, I'll put in 100 tickets. I need to save my gems for Terra and Mog, and it seems this pull is more about future-proofing for the Burst Plus. I'm tempted to wait until she comes back with her Burst Plus, but I'm a big fan of FF14 and I want her in my roster. Regardless, I'll be picking up her Heaven's Ward outfit as it's my favourite from her game. I like the Shadowbringers one, but she's a black mage in Shadowbringers. She's not a white mage in that one, so I understand where that's coming from. But lots of love for FF14, lots of love for Y'shtola. And as somebody who's been kind of segueing slowly into doing more Final Fantasy XIV content, this is all very heartwarming to see. But she's a very popular character, and there's a good reason for that. So that's going to be all for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in if you've watched up until this point. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click that bell for notifications on any future videos I might be making. And don't forget to check all those social media links as well. Also, let me know in the comments below whether you're going to be pulling on Y'shtola or Kuja. Very few of the people on my Patreon were commenting on Kuja and whether they were going to pull for them. But as I said, I think that a lot of people can live without him now, if they've lived without him up until this point. Certainly without him having his burst available, which is kind of sad. Though it is a nice point to see, if you did manage to get his burst and not his LD, say you pulled on one of his other banners, that's a nice opportunity for you to grab it now. So let me know in the comments below if that's something you're planning on doing. Anyways, that's going to be it from me. Thank you all very much for watching once again, and I shall see you in the next one. Take care.